All right, well, it is late December 2020. I've been out hiking around on the back of the property out in the woods here in southeast Oklahoma, and just thought I would share with you a report I investigated way back, about 20 years ago. I believe it was either late 1999 or 2000. I can't remember exactly, but it was back then. And I was doing some work for another Bigfoot organization back then. Of course, we're talking late 90s, early 2000s. I call them the old .com days in the Bigfoot thing. And there were a lot of these Bigfoot field research groups out there, several of them. Some of them are still around. Most of them that were around back then are not, but I was doing some volunteer work for one of them, and a report came to me about a fisherman that claimed to have seen a Sasquatch down in Leflore County. So as the report went, he was hiking along a creek and fishing, and one of these creatures stepped out in the creek in front of him, several yards ahead of him. He only saw it like from the chest down through the trees, but apparently, or his perception was, it recognized that he was there, and it stepped right back up the creek and took off. And as he at first thought it was a man wearing dark coveralls, which would have been, you know, he found that strange because it was in the heat of the summertime, and he got up to where it stepped out, and on a rock there, its wet footprint was still in the rock. So that kind of got his attention, that what he saw was probably a Sasquatch. So anyway, I got that report, and I went down to that part of the country to investigate it, and that was in Southern Leflore County, real close to the McCurtain County border. And if any of y'all have ever been down there, you know there's a lot of remote territory down there. A lot of lumber land. There's some, you know, national forest and all of that. Kiamichi Mountains, Washita Mountains, all that in that area. But anyway, went down there during the daytime, hiked through that. I got down there not even, I think, 3 or 4 days after the report was, and hiking down that creek, I was kind of doing circles around it, trying to find any footprints that may be in any muddy areas, and most of that's very rocky, so doesn't, you know, not much chance for footprints. But as I was circling that, just making circles out and made wider bands, you know, making a grid of the place, if you will, I found where something had stepped in some mud crossing a little creek coming into the main creek where there was some mud, and it was not a huge footprint, but it was the stereotypical wide, flat footprint that we associate with Sasquatch. Now, the toe definition was not real good. It had been a few days, but the definition of the foot itself was very good. There were also other tracks going through the grass and the leaves leading up to that, but I mean, that wasn't good enough to cast at all. I did make a cast of that footprint, and I will try to use that picture for the thumbnail in this video. So anyway, made that cast, reported it back to the people that I was doing the investigation for, and then made plans to come back down there and camp at night. So we waited, I think it was about a week before I could get in touch with a friend and us go down there, and we hiked further back down that creek and set up our camp. And that night, of course, we did not see anything, but something was approaching our camp and walking around the perimeter of the camp in the very dense brush around it. Couldn't see it. I mean, it could have been a bear, could have been, you know, anything. Could have been a person. The perception at first was it might have been a person checking us out, because it did seem to be a bipedal something walking in the woods. Person out there in the woods should have had a flashlight, because it's very snaky down there. I would not have walked through those woods without my flashlight being on, for fear of stepping on a cottonmouth or a copperhead. Matter of fact, earlier that evening, hiking around it, I mean, the snakes were thick, you know, so you didn't want to, you know, it's unlikely that it was a person walking around in the dark without a flashlight. So anyway, that's our perception, is it might have been what this fisherman had reported seeing. And then later in the night, it went away from camp, but it began turning over rocks in the creek further down from us. So you know, very curious. We did not find any footprints the next morning looking around. Of course, where we were camping, it was mostly, you know, very rocky terrain. But anyway, I investigated that, and that is still a very curious place. I don't make it back down there very often. Matter of fact, I went to that exact area 2 years ago, and they had the lumber company clear cut that place to where it just looks horrible. It looks like somebody set off a bomb and just decimated the land. So back 20 years ago when I investigated, it was very dense forest, and now when I went back 2 years ago, it was no forest except a little bit of trees around the creek. So that was quite depressing. So I think any Sasquatch that had been setting up a temporary residence there would have surely gone to find somewhere else to be. But anyway, hope y'all enjoy that report. If you have anything that you would like to share, any sighting reports of a Bigfoot or other cryptids, you know, Bigfoot's the thing that I investigate the most, but you know, I will be glad to hear about anything that you see out in the woods like that. Even had a person report seeing what they call a dog man here a couple of weeks ago, and I shared that report on this channel as well. So if you have a sighting of a Bigfoot or other cryptid while you're out in the woods, would like to share that with me, just send me an email in the description of it to bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. That's bigfootandmore@yahoo.com. And if you enjoy my channel, enjoy what I'm doing with it, I'd encourage you to like, share, and subscribe. And anyway, that's all I've got from this report. So until next time, you guys take care.